Welcome to today's webinar presented by Software Technology Group. Our commitment at STG is to facilitate the transformation of businesses and technology organizations through innovation and optimization. We are excited to have you as part of our audience. Our goal for this webinar is to provide valuable insights and ignite ideas that can benefit your organization. Thank you once again for joining us.
Hello, my name is Mel Tingey. I am the Chief Technology and Strategy Officer for STG, a consulting firm located in Salt Lake City, Utah, doing work with clients all throughout the United States. Today's webinar is the second part to the AI topic that we communicated last time. I've got Colby Letnack with me here again today, and Colby's going to present the majority of this. I've got a few questions that I'll interject along the way. The topic for today is autonomous AI and multi-agent crews. And the thing that I want to kind of say at the outset is the goal today is to kind of get pretty geeky, to really get into the meat of this. And Colby's going to actually show some things so that you can really get a feel for how AI looks, what it looks like to pull data, to put data in to the model, how you would use that information in various use cases. I'm really excited for today. I think it's going to be a great,
I am too.
Great discussion. I want to also point out that as part of our consulting services, we do AI assessments and helping different organizations, even parts of organizations. So we've done it for an entire organization, an entire company. We've also come in and worked with just the marketing team or just the IT team to understand where AI could potentially fit, formulating an AI strategy. And so what you're going to see today is some of the details of what we're going to do in those assessments. We're going to go into the assessments in more detail next time, but at least I wanted to give you a little inkling to what we're going to be showing today and where it fits in our work. So Colby, I'm excited. Yeah, take it away.
I'm excited too.
Like I say, I've got a couple of questions along the way, but let's jump in.
Sounds good. Excited. Okay, so let's just jump right into the goal of what we're trying to do with the presentation and the demo of the code we're actually going to do. We'll jump into the goal. We'll talk about a problem/opportunity where multi-agent teams or crews can be applied. I'll go through a brief groundwork, and then we'll jump into the solution. We'll spend a good amount of time in the solution, and then we'll talk a little bit more about LLMs, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. And so let's talk about the goals really quick. So one goal is that, as mentioned, we wanted to do something real. We wanted to show a real problem with a real solution, and also wanted to show a little bit on how to enhance how you can use large language models. A lot of times when people think about large language models, ChatGPT, for example, they just think about it as going into the web and typing in their question and hitting enter and getting the output. And there's things that you want it to do, and if you've used it for a little bit amount of time, you can see that you still want it to do more. And so we're going to show you how, with a little bit of code, you can make it do more than that, and you can automate things using large language models like ChatGPT. I also wanted to show something new. In the world of AI, things are coming out every 15 minutes, it feels like. And even things that are 6 months old are archaic in the AI world. And so I wanted to show something that's new. And I know by the time this webinar gets to everybody's hands, that things will have changed even more, but I wanted to show something new. And then I also wanted to just touch a little bit on how you can use local models and tooling that can help with like data privacy. A lot of the issues around using the closed source models like ChatGPT and Bard is around, I'm sending it my data, and I just want to show you how you can do it just briefly. So let's jump into the problem or the opportunity. So imagine this. You're a commercial property manager, right? So you own or you run a big commercial building, and you want information on your tenants. You want to see press releases. You want to see when they're getting new funding. You want to see if there's any news of layoffs or any big hirings they're going to do because it affects your office space. You want to get an idea of what their current employee counts are and maybe be able to trend that general news. And you want to report this weekly. And again, the idea here is that, at least in the terms of a property manager, is that they want to make sure that their commercial building is being utilized. And in order to do that, they need to know things about their tenants. And it's kind of like an investment, actually. They need to know how they're doing, because the next step could be they need to find a new tenant or they need to give them some more space. So some solutions to get this report, this tenant report, is they'll hire people to do the research and assemble the reports. Another thing that they could do is they could use company database tools. I'm thinking Zoom Info. I'm not super into this space, so I don't know if there's other tools out there. But typically what I hear from the property managers that I've talked to is that these tools out there, they're usually a little bit more overkill, or they're missing features. In other words, they missed the target, and they're never automatic. They still have to go out and do a lot of research and still compile reports. So even though they maybe make it easier, it's still not a great solution. So they end up hiring people. So some AI solutions that are around that you could use are, one is an AI-enabled business process automation tool, or like an integration tool that has some AI capabilities. And examples of these are like Make, Stack AI, Mind Studio, even Power Automate. Microsoft's Power Automate could do that. There's also there's others out there as well. And that's maybe the more easy way to go in your head when you think about, hey, I want to solve this problem, is to just use a process automation tool or an integration platform. And you wouldn't be wrong. I just want to state that. Yeah, that wouldn't be wrong. But again, I wanted to sort of show sort of some of the ideas and tools out there that are new. So that's where I'm going next, right? Is we've got autonomous AI agents and the idea of creating multi-agent teams that represent humans in many ways, and they do things like humans do. The tools that are out there are AutoGen, that's a Microsoft tool, or Crew AI. And Crew AI is the one that we're going to use today. I would say an AI anti-solution, and this is something that I think everybody will try and should try first, is just ask ChatGPT for it to do all the research. And what I would say to that is go ahead and try it. You'll find that some of the limitations of large language models will become really apparent. You can't just ask it to do it and it won't go out and do all of these things. It's not autonomous. It doesn't have the tools many times to do the things that needs to be done. And it'll just answer your questions the best they can. It can't even do research on more than one company with one prompt. It would, at least right now, it doesn't. So let's go into some groundwork. Let's talk a little bit about large language models, just to sort of level set. And I know many folks know this stuff. Just want to make sure we've got kind of a base understanding. So large language models are good at a lot of things. So they're good at text completion and translation. In fact, text completion is the sort of the foundation technology that large language models were built for. And we've sort of learned over time that they can be fine-tuned to be good at translation, and then later chatting and summarizing text, expounding text. It also can do categorization and classification. It can do entity identification, which is finding, the subjects and the objects and the things in a story or an article, and keep track of them. It also has reasoning abilities, which we'll talk about later, that are continually growing. They're good for ideation. I mentioned chatting. So large language models, unfortunately, aren't good at everything. There are things that they're not great at. One is if you give it a lot of steps, it breaks down. Another thing that they're notoriously not good at is crossing domains of expertise in the same prompt, in the same job, I would say. And the idea is that all of the training data that these large language models train on, they're usually medical journals and, if, for example, things like medical journals and let's just say like Wikipedia articles, and they, in each of those sort of pieces of data, pieces of training data are very specific, and so it's hard for it to say take what it learned in one article and apply it to another one per se. It can and it will, but once you start crossing multiple domains of expertise, it kind of falls apart. It's also not very good at complex decision making, and I'm talking about things that need to be thought about and then reviewed and bounced off other people and feedback loops and all of those things. It's not good at. It just processes, and in the end, it's just trying to give you an answer that you like, and it can't do that if it doesn't have all these steps. It's not very good at quantifying tasks necessarily. We won't talk about that right now in detail. It's also, this is really important, it's not very good at being humble. And what I mean by being humble is, and I'm sure you've seen this if used a little bit of time, is that when you ask it a question and it's wrong, it will be confidently wrong, and you don't want to trust it all the time. So it's not very good at being humble. So you have to be careful. You have to know its limitations. All right, so let's just jump into some terms that are, I think, becoming or have become industry standard terms. I think they're still changing a little bit. They're applicable to the demo that I'm about to do. So one is AI assistant. An AI assistant is just like ChatGPT is right now for the most part, where you prompt it and it answers a question, and it doesn't really do anything else besides give you information. An AI agent, on the other hand, is you think of it as like an assistant that can do something for you. You ask it to do something and it can do something for you. And in order for that to happen, you have to give the agent or the LLM a tool so that it can. And then an autonomous AI agent is just what it sounds. It's an agent that you can tell it what to do, give it a role, give it a goal, and then it works through the night for you. And maybe it's always working for you depending on how it is. And just to demystify that, it's literally just some software that runs all the time. That's all it is. And last but not least, which is where we're going to get into today, is a concept of a crew or a multi-agent team. And the idea here is that you have many AI agents, autonomous AI agents that have tools that can do things for you, and they're all working together, so to speak, to accomplish a goal. So the question that we want to answer with this demo today is, back to the property manager, is what if we could create a team of AI agents that work together to build this tenant report? And so let's jump into that. So just to help you understand how we're going to do this, and then I'll show you the code, so we're going to identify some roles. So let's say we have a company research analyst and a report writer. And out there in the world is company news, employee counts, information, and it's out on the web. What we do is we would give this company research analyst agent the ability through a tool, and I'll just use DuckDuckGo to go and grab that information. So this company research analyst will have a tool and it'll have the ability to go get that information. Then the company research analyst will grab that data and hand it to the report writer as it gets it, and the report writer will update the tenant report as it gets its information. And at the end, you'll have an updated tenant report with all of the companies that you want to do research for. And you can build, it doesn't have to be 2 AI agents, it could be multiples. You can have lots of different ways to do this. Some tools we're going to use today, and I'm just bringing these up because you'll see it in the code. The core one is Crew AI. That's the framework that I'm going to be building on. And then underneath that, it's built on top of LangChain. And then we'll need a DuckDuckGo tool, an internet search tool. And that's, again, provided by LangChain, so you'll see that. And we'll also want Ollama. And we only need Ollama to show you how to use local models. Local models are the way to they're typically open source, and they're the way that you can run these in your own systems instead of sending all your data over to OpenAI or wherever. And Ollama just helps you do that. And then we also need ChatGPT, and you'll see in a second why I need to use ChatGPT. So Crew AI, the way they have things set up is you got sort of 3 levels or 3 layers of work that are components of the framework. One is AI agents, and as mentioned before, company research analyst and report writer are the 2 AI agents we're going to have. Then there's processes or the process. And this is the way it gets the work done. And the one we will use today is the sequential process. Again, it's just one step at a time. It passes the results of one step to the next step. And the AI agent that's next on the step just picks up the work where it left off and just continues. And then there's a concept called tasks. And the kind of tasks we need are, one is a blank report to start that tenant report. And then we need an array of research company tasks for the company research analyst agent to go out and research everything that needs to be researched. And then we need an array of tasks that will take those findings and implement them and put them into the tenant report. And to go back up to the AI agents, we need to arm these agents with different capabilities. For example, we could do this. You'll see in a second. I won't exactly do it this way. We could arm the company research analyst with ChatGPT, and we could arm the report writer with Mistral AI. Mistral is a different large language model that you can use locally. And maybe ChatGPT is good at one thing, and Mistral AI is good at another thing, and you could sort of make these agents that work together, and they have different backbones. We also need to arm, as mentioned before, the company research analyst with a tool, DuckDuckGo in this case. And so this is how it would look in terms of how to set this thing up. So let me show the solution. Let's just go through the code really quick, and we'll start at the top. So at the top, right, we're grabbing, importing Crew AI and agent tasks, crew, and process. Here's my OpenAI key. If you feel like you want to use that later, go ahead. It's not going to work by the time you see this. And then from LangChain, we need the DuckDuckGo search tool, which I pulled it in right there. We need Ollama, and we need ChatGPT, the OpenAI library. And so one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to instantiate a browsing tool, which is just DuckDuckGo search. And then we're going to create 2 LLMs here just to show you how it works. So one is I'm going to create a local LLM called Ollama. The model I'm going to use is the Mistral model. This is a Yarn Mistral model. And the reason I chose this one is because it has a really large context window. And you'll see here in a second, the amount of our prompt sizes will get really large, and I want to make sure that the model can handle it. And so that's why I chose that one. And then the other one I chose was ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo, and I'll show you how to use that in a second. And I do want to mention that setting the temperature to 0, this is really important if you've done any development or integration with any models, large language models, is that one of the frustrations with programmers is that these large language models they feel very non-deterministic, and that's a nightmare for engineers. And one of the things I like to do is set the temperature to 0. Temperature to 0 basically just gets rid of all of the creativity. Maybe not all of the creativity, that's not the right word. It makes it more stable, and it makes it so it repeats whatever you ask it. It says the same thing every time. And so you can have some confidence that you're working more with software and less with a person. But it does happen to be a little less creative and out there and those sorts of things. So it's not useful in every situation, but I like to set it to 0 almost every time because that's how I work. Okay, next thing is we're going to choose some companies. Now, when building this originally, we had obviously some real companies in here and many more. And so we wanted to use less companies. And these are real companies, but they also they're just companies that are in a random corporate campus that we found. And so there's nothing special about these companies other than there's a place that has all three of these together. So we got to instantiate that. So those are the companies that we're going to work with. Now, here's where we get to the meat. So we're going to talk about a report writer. We talked about the report writer agent a moment ago. Its role as a report writer, and we've got to give it a goal. And the goal is it's going to write report that has recent news, any press releases, and estimated employee counts. And then you've got to give it a backstory. Now, I got to be careful with the backstory because I want to demystify this a little bit, because in the end, all it does is pass the backstory into the prompt to the large language model in the background. So you don't have to think too hard about this necessarily. But the way I like to think about a backstory is that, and maybe the way to think about it is as if it were a human. And this is not a human, for sure. But let's pretend like it is for a second. If you have a human that has a backstory that's received some training, you know that they can do this, and you've maybe verified that they could. And so I like to show, or I like to give in the backstory or in my prompts examples, the examples of the output that they should provide. And basically, think of it as just like training, not like model training, even though the world calls this prompt training. It's not actual machine learning, but you can use it to sort of tell the agent exactly how you want it to behave. And so, for example, I'm just giving them 2 tenant reports. One is this one right here, right? I've got made up company names: Super Space Storage, Lazy Day, Punk Rocker Ventures. There's some fake news and some estimated employee counts that are made up. And then I just put another example right here with different companies, different news, different estimated employee counts to show what's the same and what's different between the outputs that they're going to be presenting. And then I also provided a blank report because that's how we have to start. So again, different companies that are, again, fake, that are different. But then I showed that these fields that need to be filled out later will be empty. And so I'm sort of giving it a definition, kind of like a human. It's a little scary that you're kind of showing this to them as if it were a human. And it's surprising how incredible it is. And then, and I'm calling it a tenant report so that it has that context. When I say in future prompts, hey, update the tenant report, they know what I'm talking about. So I'm, verbose is false. That's just for, helping debug. I'm not going to go into delegation. And here's the key thing. You get to choose the LLM that this agent has in its backbone. And this one, I'm going to choose ChatGPT LLM. Let me actually stop for a second. I mentioned this. I forgot to say this earlier. Let me scroll back up. This local LLM, as we were building this and I was running this on my laptop for this presentation, we found that my laptop is not fast enough and I wanted to show it local. And so long story short is it's just too slow to run. So I'm actually not going to run the local model, but I just wanted to show you that this is how you can do it. If you import Olama and pull down the LLM locally and then set the LLM here, then you can run a multi-agent team without ChatGPT or sending your data across the wire necessarily. So I'm going to set this one to be ChatGPT. I'm setting this memory to be true because I want it to remember from step to step what it did before. And every time it goes from step to step, it needs to remember what was in the tenant report previously. You'll see that in a second. A researcher, on the other hand, we'll just jump into memory really quick. The researcher doesn't need memory because all it's doing is going out and doing research and passing that data to somebody. And the next time it needs to do research for the next company, it doesn't need to remember what it researched on the previous company. So I set memory to false, and that just speeds it up and reduces the number of tokens that you're sending to the LLM. So this is let's just start from the top right here. This is a company research analyst. Again, discover how many employees a company has, find press releases, other relevant information about companies, and then the backstory is pretty light. You work for a commercial property firm, and you're just doing research for companies. Not very much. Not even sure that's necessary. Actually, I should test without it. And then I think here's the key thing here is that we armed it with a tool. The company researcher needs the ability to go out to the internet and browse and search for recent news and see what the employee count could be today versus yesterday, those sorts of things. And it needs that power. And maybe I should pause for a second and mention this too. I think most people know this, but I just want to make sure that people know is a lot of these LLMs, they get trained on data up into a certain point, and they get to a point where their knowledge is cut off at the end of their training or their training date, and they don't know anything past that. And so it's important to have a tool that allows the LLM to go out to get information that it doesn't know yet because it happened after the training date. And so that's why that tool is important. But there could be other tools I'll talk about this later, but there could be other tools that you can give it. All right, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to jump into the list of things that need to be done. First is we're going to write a report, and this is just a blank report. And I'm giving it the list of companies. So write this report, and that's it. That's all it's got to do. Now, we need to go through the list of companies. If you remember earlier, we have the list of those 3 companies. Now we're going to go through each of those, and we're going to create several tasks for each of those, 4 tasks to be precise. The first task for each company is going to be just go out there and find the number of employees it has. Just do the research. And the second one is, and by the way, the researcher is going to do that one. And then the second task is the report writer is going to do, and they're going to go out there or they're going to take the employee count that the researcher found and update the tenant report. And same thing, researcher is going to go out and find any news that happened in the last 7 weeks, and the report writer is going to take that news and update the tenant report. And these are just literally the prompts that get sent to the LLM behind the scenes. And you get to tell it in natural language what you want it to do. So, for example, in case the researcher finds something that's older than 7 weeks, you tell the report writer to ignore it. And there are, for example, as we built this, there are news articles that are really kind of pointless for a tenant manager, and the kinds of reports and news that we saw were or announcements where they're going to post their financials on such and such a day, and that's a news story, and that's not a very good news story for a tenant manager. And so we're telling it to we're telling it to ignore those ones. And then we're also telling it to prioritize news that have to do with anything with receiving funding, any merger acquisition type news, or anything that would affect employee counts. And then at the end, you want it to show the updated tenant report so that you can see it. And then last but not least, we create the crew. The crew has a researcher and a report writer, has the list of things to do. The process that it's going to run is sequential, which you talked about earlier, and I just made it a little bit verbose. We're going to kick off the crew, and we're going to run with it and print the results. So I'm going to hit play. However, even with ChatGPT 3.5, it's going to take a little bit of a minute to run. So let me just jump through the output of what it will look like. And then
let me interrupt.
Yep.
So approximately how long? Like, I know you're trying to condense this for the webinar, but how long will that run?
Yeah, I think it took. For the 3, I think it took like 5 mintes.
Okay.
Yeah. it's an eternity on a webinar.
Yeah, I was going to say, from an AI perspective, that's a long time. Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, you think it doesn't take 5 minutes to hire somebody to do this. Let me say that. To run to build a tenant report. So this is how it worked. First thing, and I'll show the output here in a second as it's running. You'll see how far it got while I'm going through this. So create a blank tenant report is right here, right? And then this is what it responded with. I'll create a blank tenant report, and here are the companies, and I would say it did that right. And then the company researcher gets the next task, and that is find the number of employees for the company Extra Space Storage. And it gives the answer 4781. And then the report writer says, or gets the task to update the employee count in the tenant report. And it does it. It takes 4781 and updates it right there. And so on. Then it moves to Extra Space Storage's news, and it looks like it found 5 news articles. And, one of them looks like is a little too old for this. And it asks the report writer now to filter through that. And it looks like it chose those 2 as being important. And there was a merger with Live Storage, which that seems important. The New York Stock Exchange closing bell ceremony does not sound very important, but the merger does. And so I would say this was okay output. But it kept the old estimated employee count, and then it continues, right? It researches the next company, Crocker Ventures. It could not find an employee count. And meanwhile, by the time it gets done, this is what it looks like. If completely filled out tenant report. And so that's kind of how you expect it to work. And then let's just see where it is. So it started already, and it looks like there's a blank tenant report right here. Let me scroll this up so you could see there. And just plugging through it. So that's the output. Okay, so let's talk about this really quick. Let's kind of zoom out a little bit. One of the things that's cool about this is if you think about comparing it to another automated solution, is we didn't have to find out where the news was. In fact, we still don't know where the news was. It just went out and did a search and found it. So, and in some sense, we don't care if it changes. If the world changes around this process here, and the news is found somewhere else, the agent will go and find that, and that's fine. That's great. I think that's a good thing. We also didn't have to write, let's say, a website scraper or RSS feed interface to get to the data. We don't actually care if that changes either. In fact, that could be a tool we add later is an RSS feed connection. Maybe that improves the results. Whoops. And we didn't have to define like a format or a contract in how the data moved from step to step like you do in a normal piece of software. Because the agents can sort of understand natural language, they can sort of figure out that data on its own. And maybe that makes you a little nervous, and in some sense it should, that there isn't a lot of, like you're not defining everything. But that's kind of the beauty of it too, is that you don't have to define it. So let's talk a little bit about ways that this can be enhanced and made better. So one thing we could do is add, say, a third agent. We can call it a quality control agent. And that could be somebody that sort of fixes mistakes and ensures the output is consistent. And sometimes with these large language models, even with the temperature turned down all the way, because of the data it found on the internet and how it interpreted that, it may not be as consistent of an output, and quality control agents can help with that. We could add an emailer agent. Let's say we're really excited about the output every time it runs, and we're just ready to just email that to the boss. We could have a third agent again, or even a fourth agent that is armed with an emailer tool, and we'll just send the email to management. And then that becomes almost completely autonomous. We could go a step further, and we could get a business development agent that's really good at drafting outreach emails to tenants. And we could identify, the large language model can identify which tenants received maybe some new funding or are looking to expand. And that outreach email could be the first step in trying to grow that business there. The next one is we could use something like this this system here to research potential tenants as part of a screening process. We could also give it some more advice, like I was saying earlier, about where to go find good information if we feel like the news isn't as good. Now, I do want to point out that the grass is not always greener. I think maybe you look at this and you go, "Oh, this is so great. This is going to replace everything." And I don't think it is. I think it's great, but I don't think it's going to replace everything. And just think about like a traditional software package or software application that you could write. You write it, it's going to be more deterministic because you're going to know exactly how every step runs, and you can more easily test every step, and it's going to be more stable, except the fact that it depends on the outside world that changes all the time. And so as long as that stays the same, it's going to be more stable. Where on the other hand, an AI crew is, there's going to be less effort and cost. I mean, you saw that we just put this together, and it doesn't take very long. It's also going to be easier to adjust, and in some ways will adjust on its own because it's got that ability built in. However, I will say this, that if you're looking for some absolute perfection, sometimes that will require a process called fine tuning. You might feel like you need to fine tune some of the models that you're using to make them even better. And if you're doing anything significant in the fine tuning front, maybe you lose all of the cost savings benefit because that takes some time as well. And so it's not always the best thing to do this. You have to be careful. And I would say that just measure your projects, right? Do the analysis beforehand. Don't just jump into this and say, this is going to work. And, we can help you with that for sure. Would like to talk a little bit about some more use cases for crews and for multi-agent teams. For example, you could use multi-agent teams to handle outages, at least notification to customers. And the situation that I was involved in was, when an outage happens, there's usually tickets in your systems, and there's lots of comments from really nerdy engineers and comments about how it was resolved. And that needs to be sort of transformed and turned into something that the customer needs. And it needs to come out fast. That's the other thing, is you can't do this, or I should say the faster the better when you notify the customers. And so when an outage happens, a crew could go look at the comments and summarize the comments and make them easier for a high school student to understand, is maybe the level you want, and then draft an outreach email. And then I wouldn't have it send it automatically right now. I don't think the technology is quite there. You want a human reviewer for that for sure, but that is something that it could do for sure. It could do market research. Let's say you're thinking about some business opportunities in a certain space. You could have it go out and do market research. Same thing, DuckDuckGo search or another tool that goes out and does research, and have it assess emerging business opportunities and see what it can do. See what it can do there. You can have it. You can set up agents that will write code, test code, and improve code, and do it in a loop. And there's been some success in the industry of doing something like that, and that's a really cool use case. Some of my favorite projects are things like that. It could do research and write blog posts and tweets. You can make it do it automatically. And I imagine this is the way you should imagine this is, do research on a subject, maybe news articles that are new, and then draft a tweet that's your company's style and brand, and put it into later.com or whatever your social media management tools are. Let me jump into some large language model details here. And this is important because, again, a lot of times when we think about large language models, and I talk to people all the time, and the thing that they say is, we want to use ChatGPT to solve this. And I just want to back that up for a second, because it doesn't have to be ChatGPT. And maybe that is the right solution, but it not always is. So there's cloud, closed source, proprietary large language models, and they are all the rage out there in the world right now. ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, which is powered by ChatGPT underneath. Google Bard has Gemini underneath. And then there's a company called Anthropic Claude that broke out from OpenAI early last year. Those are, all options for you, absolutely. And there's APIs, and you can connect with them and all those sorts of things. But the open source world is vibrant, and it's a wonderful community, and we don't want to ignore that either. Llama 2, Meta trained the Llama models, and they're training Llama 3 right now, if you've seen that in the news. And they're open source, they're local, you can just pull them down and use them in your own hardware. Mistral's a French company. They released several models. The most recent's Mixtral, a mixture of experts model. And just mentioning this, just to make sure you understand how crazy this is, there's over 500,000 models, at least right now, on Hugging Face. And Hugging Face is a platform that it's an open source community for machine learning and generative AI and large language models. In fact, they've got a leaderboard that shows the best models in the different spaces and different metrics. And so it's a great way to go and see what's out there. I'll mention this too. When we think about large language models, a lot of times, especially if you're jumping into the open source world, a lot of times the models tout the number of parameters it has. And so if you see a parameter count, it's trying to sell you on it in a lot of ways. Even though it's not the measure of how much of a quality or how quality of a large language model it is one of the metrics that indicators, I should say, of the quality of a large language model. And the more parameters usually results in more reasoning abilities, the ability for it to capture the nuance of different words and sentences. And so I should mention, too, the architecture and training data matter, too. In fact, I think in the future, it'll matter more than parameter counts. I think we're seeing a diminishing rate of return on just increasing parameter counts to get the better quality that we want. So Llama 2 has a 7 billion, a 13 billion, and a 70 billion model. There's 3 of those models. Mixtral, we mentioned that one. That's a 56 billion model. ChatGPT is a 175 billion model, and ChatGPT 4, it appears to be 1.7 trillion model, but I don't think OpenAI has confirmed that. And let me just sort of drive home some reasoning abilities that sort of the difference between the parameter counts, and so you can appreciate a little bit better how better models are sometimes worth it. So here's sort of a quintessential reasoning story test that you can do. Bob is in the living room. He walks into the kitchen carrying a large cup. He puts the small ball in the cup and carries the cup to the bedroom. He turns the cup upside down, then walks to the garden, and pause there for a second. Obviously, the ball should fall out, but we don't explicitly state that. And he puts the cup down in the garden, then walks to the garage. And if you pass this into ChatGPT 3.5 and ask it, where is the ball? ChatGPT 3.5 will say it's in the garden, because the text didn't say that the ball fell out in the bedroom. But ChatGPT 4 understands that when you turn a cup upside down, the ball falls out. And when you take the cup to the other room, you leave the ball. And so ChatGPT 4 gives the right answer, which is the ball is in the bedroom. And so that sort of reasoning ability comes with better architecture, better training data, and and increased parameter counts typically. So takeaways. Hopefully what you see here is the AI crews, multi-agent teams. They can help you automate business processes in different ways and can enhance systems integrations. In fact, I think that one of the things we'll see in 2024 is more systems integration level superpowers in terms of how AI can work and enhance that. Hopefully you saw at least a little bit of a takeaway or a little bit of a sense that open source LLMs can help solve some of the data privacy concerns that that we all have. And then LLMs are not for everything. You can't do, LLMs can't solve all problems. A lot of people in the world think they can. And then I should say AI solves a lot, but it won't solve everything. And last but not least is, we can help. We can help you do an AI assessment. We can help look at your project. We can help look at your teams. We can help look at your business and help find ways that AI can help you and help you identify projects. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is great. Colby, thank you. I like the level of depth we got to today, and we'll wrap things up and turn back to us live and open it up for Q&A. So thank you. Really appreciate you all being here with us.
We hope you found value in today's webinar. If you wish to delve deeper into how STG can contribute to the innovation and optimization of your organization, please visit our website at stgconsulting.com for more information. Thank you for being with us today. We wish you a fantastic day ahead.